They buried Eleanor Ashford on a frozen November morning in 1876. The whole town came. Margaret Finch wept. The Reverend spoke of tragic youth cut short. They lowered a coffin into frozen ground. Eleanor Ashford wasn't dead. She was standing 20 miles north, watching smoke rise from the valley below, alive in a cabin with the man they called a beast, 19 years old, sold to pay her father's debt, married to a mountain brute who lived like an animal. The town waited for her body to turn up. It didn't, because here's what they didn't know. He'd given her a loaded rifle, a horse, and a map to the nearest city. She could have left a dozen times. She stayed anyway, and that terrified them more than if he'd killed her. The town of Coldwater wasn't much. A main street of mud, a saloon smelling of tobacco, a general store, a church with crooked steeple, and people who watched everything. People who whispered constantly. Eleanor had lived here forever. She'd never belonged. Too poor for bankers' wives. Too quiet for church women. But now they noticed her. Poor dear, Margaret Finch said yesterday. Her hand like a claw, married to that creature. Eleanor had said nothing. What was there to say? Margaret leaned closer, voice dropping. They say he killed a man, up in those mountains, with his bare hands. Eleanor pulled her arm free. They say many things. Margaret's smile was thin. Well, I'll pray for you. It didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like a eulogy. The wedding was set for noon. Eleanor woke to frost on windows. Her father was already gone, probably at the saloon. Liquid courage for selling daughters. She dressed slowly, carefully. The borrowed dress fit poorly. Too big in the shoulders. Too tight in the waist. It didn't matter at all. No one would remember the dress. They'd only remember the groom. She walked to church alone. The streets were empty. Too early for most folks. But curtains twitched as she passed. Eyes always watching. Always judging her. The church door stood open. Inside, Reverend Clay arranged candles. He looked up at her entrance. His face was kind but pitying. Eleanor. You're early. I didn't want to wait. He nodded without asking. Didn't offer a way out. He knew there wasn't one. We'll be here soon. The Reverend couldn't say the name. Eleanor sat in the front pew. The church was bitterly cold. Candles barely warmed the air. She folded her hands and waited for her fate. The town filled the church, not because they cared about Eleanor. They wanted to see him, the mountain man himself. Margaret Finch arrived with her husband. Her eyes hungry for gossip. Samuel Gray stumbled in drunk. He leaned against the wall. This ought to be something. More people trickled inside slowly. Shopkeepers and farmers arrived. Women in their Sunday best. By 1:45, nearly full. Eleanor sat alone up front. Father still hadn't arrived. She didn't look back. Didn't acknowledge the whispers. Just stared at the altar and waited for him. Then the doors opened wide. The whispers stopped instantly. Eleanor heard the sharp silence. She turned to look and saw him standing there. Jacob Hartwell filled the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered. He wore a bear fur coat, dark and patched at shoulder, buckskin trousers stained with blood, boots caked in mud. His hair was long, pulled back in low tie. His beard was thick. He looked exactly like a beast-eat, a brute from the mountains. He stepped inside the church. The floor creaked under him. People shifted in their seats. One woman pulled her shawl tighter. A man touched his pistol. Jacob didn't seem to notice. His eyes scanned the room, gray, cold, and empty. Then they landed on Eleanor. She couldn't look away now. For a moment she thought, turn and leave her. But he didn't do that. He walked down the aisle, slow and very deliberate, boots heavy on the wood. Pine smoke followed him. Leather scent filled the air. He stopped right beside her, didn't sit down, just stood looking at Reverend. Let's get this done. His voice was low, rough like gravel, but not cruel at all. Just tired and worn. Reverend. Clay cleared his throat. We're waiting for the father. Jacob glanced at Eleanor. You got a father? Eleanor's jaw tightened. He'll be here, Jacob shrugged. Once. Don't need him. She's of age. The Reverend hesitated. It's customary to. I don't care about custom. She want to do this? All eyes turned to Eleanor. She felt the weight. Margaret Finch's pity. Samuel Gray's amusement. The Reverend's concern. And Jacob's gray eyes, not demanding anything, just waiting for her answer. Eleanor stood up slowly. Let's begin. The ceremony was very short. Reverend Clay spoke quickly. Stumbling over some words, Eleanor barely heard them. Too focused on the man, Jacob stood perfectly still. He didn't fidget at all, didn't look around the room, just stared straight ahead. When the vows came, Jacob repeated them flatly. No hesitation or emotion, just words he spoke. Eleanor's voice shook badly. I, Eleanor Ashford, take you. She didn't know his name. Jacob glanced at her. Jacob, he said quietly. Jacob as my husband. The Reverend produced 2 rings, Sybil iron bands. Not gold at all. Jacob took Eleanor's hand. His fingers were rough. His touch was light. He slid the ring on. It was too big. Eleanor took his hand. It dwarfed hers completely. She slipped the ring on. It fit him perfectly. I now pronounce you married. He didn't sound celebratory. He sounded like a sentence. Jacob released her hand, stepped back from her. The Reverend blinked. You may kiss the bride. Jacob's jaw tightened. He looked at Eleanor, a question in his eyes. She didn't nod or move. Jacob turned to the Reverend. We're done here, and he walked away. Eleanor stood frozen. Then she followed him out. The congregation watched in silence. Margaret Finch leaned over. Poor child, won't last winter. Outside, a wagon waited. 2 horses hitched to it, strong mountain breeds, shaggy and sure-footed. Jacob climbed into the seat. Eleanor hesitated briefly. He didn't look at her, just waited patiently. She gathered her skirt, climbed up beside him, sat as far away. Jacob clicked his tongue. The horses moved forward. The wagon rolled away. Eleanor looked back once. Her father stood watching in the saloon doorway. He didn't wave goodbye, didn't call out, just watched her leave. Then he turned back inside. Eleanor faced forward. She didn't look back again. They rode in complete silence. The town fell away. The road became a trail. The trail became a path, and the path began climbing. The air grew colder. The trees grew thicker. Pine and spruce, heavy with snow. Eleanor had never been this far from town. She had heard stories about mountains, about cold that killed, about wolves hunting in packs, about men who never returned. She glanced at Jacob, but he hadn't spoken since leaving. His eyes stayed on trail, his hands steady on reins. After an hour, Eleanor spoke. How far? Jacob didn't look at her. Another 2 hours. His voice was flat, not unkind, just factual. Eleanor pulled her shawl tighter. The wind was picking up. Snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier and heavier. The trail narrowed significantly. One side was steep mountain. The other side was darkness. Eleanor's hands gripped the seat. Jacob noticed her fear. Horses know the way. Done this 100 times. It didn't comfort her. The wagon hit a rock, lurched sideways violently. Eleanor gasped, grabbing anything. Her hand found Jacob's arm. He steadied the wagon with the other hand. He caught her wrist. You're safe. I won't let you fall. His grip was firm, not painful, just steady. Eleanor looked at him. Up close his face was weathered and lined. A scar crossed his jaw, but his eyes weren't cruel, just tired and sad. He released her wrist. Hold on to the rail. We're almost through this. Eleanor did as told. Her heart was pounding, but not just from fear, from something else, something she couldn't name. The trail leveled out, the trees opened up, and Eleanor saw it. A valley spread before them, not large at all. Maybe a mile across, surrounded by mountains, and in the center, smoke rising from a chimney. A cabin stood there, log-built and sturdy, larger than she expected. Jacob guided the wagon down. The snow was deep here, untouched except for tracks. His tracks from earlier. When he'd gone to town, they stopped at the cabin. Jacob climbed down, came around to her side, offered his hand. Eleanor hesitated briefly, then took it. His hand was warm. He helped her down, released her immediately. Inside, he said simply, I'll see to the horses. Eleanor looked at the door, just wood and iron latch. She pushed it open and stepped into her home. The inside was warmer. A fire burned in fireplace. The main room was open. A table and chairs, a counter with a basin, shelves lined with supplies, furs draped over frames. A rifle hung above door. Stairs led to a loft. It wasn't fancy at all, but it wasn't a hovel. It was clean and organized, lived in but cared for. Eleanor stood center, unsure what to do. Behind her, the door opened. Jacob entered, carrying her bag, the only thing she brought. He set it by stairs. Your room's up there? He nodded to the loft. Door on the right. Eleanor blinked at him. My room? Jacob crossed to the fireplace, adid a log carefully. You'll have your own space, bed, window. There's a lock. He straightened, brushing ash off. I don't have the key. Eleanor stared at him. You don't have a key? Jacob shook his head. No need for one. He moved to the counter. Poured water into a kettle. There's food in the pantry, water in the barrel, firewood stacked outside. He set kettle over fire. You can come and go. Rifles by the door. Eleanor's mind was spinning. You're giving me a rifle? Jacob glanced at her. For bears and wolves. He paused briefly. Not for me. The words hung there. Eleanor didn't know what to say to him. Jacob picked up a coat from a peg by door. I'll be out checking trap lines. Back before dark, he pulled the coat on, looked at her once more. Lock your door, if it makes you safer. And then he left. The door closed behind him. Eleanor stood alone. Fire crackled softly. The kettle began hissing. Outside, his footsteps faded. She looked up at loft, at the door on right, her room with a lock that he didn't have key to. Slowly, Eleanor climbed the stairs. Her hand shook. She pushed the door open. Inside was a small room, a bed with thick blankets, a window overlooking the valley, a small table with candle, and on the door inside, a heavy iron bolt. Eleanor closed the door, slid the bolt into place. The click echoed loudly. She sat on the bed, and for the first time since her father's announcement, Eleanor let herself cry. Not from fear, exactly. Not from sadness, either. But from confusion. Because the man they called a beast had just given her the one thing no one else ever had, a choice to make. Night fell fast. Eleanor had cried herself out. Now she sat on bed, staring out the window. The valley was dark. Stars filled the sky, more stars than she'd seen. The lights from Coldwater were visible in the distance, tiny and faint, so far away now. She heard the door open, footsteps on the wood. Heavy boots moving around. Eleanor's breath caught. She listened very carefully. Jacob moved around below. The fire crackled louder. Water poured somewhere, something set on the table. Then his footsteps approached stairs. Eleanor's hand went to bolt. It was locked. Her heart pounded anyway. The footsteps reached the top, paused right there. Eleanor held her breath. Silence filled the space. Then something outside, a soft thud. Jacob's footsteps retreated down the stairs, across the main room. A door closed below. Eleanor waited patiently, counted to 100. Then slowly, quietly, she unbolted her door, opened it a crack, and looked down on the floor outside. Sat a plate bread, meat, an apple, still warm from cooking. He'd brought her dinner, and never knocked. Eleanor picked up the plate, looked down at main room. The fire still burned, but Jacob was gone. She carried the plate inside, locked the door again, and sat on bed, eating in silence. The bread was good, the meat seasoned simply, the apple was crisp. He'd made this for her, left it outside her door, never asked her down, never demanded anything. Eleanor set the plate aside, lay down on bed, still fully dressed, pulled the blankets over. They smelled like pine and wood smoke. Outside, the wind picked up. It howled through the valley, but inside was warm, and Eleanor, for the first time in months, felt something strange. Not quite safety, not quite peace, but something close to it. She closed her eyes, and despite everything, she slept. Morning light woke her. Cold and bright, Eleanor sat up, disoriented. For a moment she didn't know where she was exactly, and then it came back, the wedding yesterday, the mountain journey, the cabin home. Jacob, the mountain man. She went to the door, hesitated briefly, then unbolted it, and looked out. The plate was gone. In its place sat water, fresh and cold. Eleanor picked it up, drank deeply. The water was clean, icy from the creek. She crept to the stairs, looked down carefully. Jacob sat at the table, a cup of coffee. He stared into the fire, perfectly still and quiet. Eleanor watched him closely. He didn't look like a beast. He looked like a man who had been alone forever. As if sensing her gaze, Jacob looked up. Their eyes met. Eleanor froze in place. Jacob didn't smile, didn't speak at all, just gave a small nod, then stood up, pulled on his coat. Coffee's hot, food's in the pantry. He crossed to the door, paused with hand on latch. I'll be out most day. Checking traps. He glanced back at her. You need anything. It's here. Rifles loaded. You know how to use? Eleanor shook her head. Jacob's jaw tightened. I'll teach you later. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Don't go past tree line. Easy to get lost. And then he was gone. The door closed. Eleanor stood at the stairs, alone again. But this time felt different. This time she wasn't locked in. She was just here. Slowly she descended the stairs. The cabin was quiet. The fire was warm. She poured herself coffee. It was strong and bitter, but hot enough. She wrapped her hands around and looked out the window. The valley spread before her, white with snow, ringed by mountains. Beautiful and isolated, hers for now, whether she wanted it. Eleanor took a breath, and for the first time, since this all began, was Jacob Hartwell? And why had he agreed to marry a girl he didn't even know? Eleanor spent that day exploring the cabin. Not snooping exactly, just learning where things were. The pantry held supplies she'd never seen before. Flour, salt, dried beans, smoked meat in bundles. Preserves in glass jars enough to last months, maybe even longer. The cabin had 2 rooms. Downstairs she hadn't noticed. One was a storage room. Furs stacked on shelves, tools hanging on pegs. Rope coiled very neatly. The other was Jacob's room. The door stood open. Eleanor stood in the doorway, didn't go inside. A bed and a chest. A single chair. Nothing else at all. No pictures or items. Just the bare minimum, like he'd built a place. To sleep and nothing more. She turned away. Jacob returned at sunset. Eleanor was sitting by fire, a book in her lap. She'd found it on shelf. A collection of essays, well worn and read. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Jacob entered carrying rabbits, already skinned and ready. He hung them on hook, washed his hands. Eleanor watched him carefully. His movements were efficient, practiced, and precise. No wasted motion. He glanced at her, saw the book. You read? Eleanor nodded. When I can. Jacob grunted once, not disapproving at all, just acknowledging her. He moved to the stove, started preparing the rabbits. Eleanor set the book aside. Can I help? Jacob paused briefly, looked at her strangely. You don't have to. I know, Eleanor said firmly. I'd like to. He studied her carefully, then nodded once. Potatoes are in the bin. Need 3 peeled and quartered. Eleanor stood up, found a knife, found the potatoes. They worked in silence. Jacob at the stove, Eleanor at the counter. The only sound was fire, and knife on board. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just quiet. When the food was ready, Jacob set 2 plates down, sat at the table. Eleanor joined him. They ate quietly. Jacob didn't make conversation, didn't ask about her day, just ate methodically. Eleanor did the same, but halfway through, she spoke up. The cabin is well built. Jacob looked up. Built it myself. 6 years ago. You've been here 6 years? Longer. Had a smaller place. Eleanor waited to see if he'd say more. He didn't at all. She tried again. Do you ever go to town? Once a month for supplies, that's all. Jacob set his fork down. Town doesn't like me. I don't like town. Works out. He picked fork back up. Conversation over apparently. Eleanor finished eating, collected the plates, washed them in basin. Behind her Jacob stood. I'll be up early, heading north to check traps. Eleanor nodded once. Good night, then. Jacob paused at the stairs. You did fine today. Eleanor turned around. What? But he was already climbing. A moment later, a door closed. His room, probably. Eleanor stood alone in the firelight. You did fine today. It wasn't much, but it was something. The days began forming pattern. Jacob left early. Eleanor woke to coffee made. Bread or biscuits left. He'd return at dusk. They'd prepare dinner together, eat in near silence, and then retreat separately. It was lonely, but also predictable, safe in its way. Eleanor started taking tasks. Without being asked, she kept the fire going, swept the floors clean, organized the pantry. Not because she had to, but because she needed something. One morning she found Jacob outside chopping wood. The axe came down with perfect precision. Again and again the pile grew. Eleanor watched from the doorway. He worked without stopping, breath clouding in cold air, wet on his brow. He glanced up, saw her watching, didn't stop working, just kept going. Eleanor wrapped her shawl tighter. Do you need help? Jacob sunk the axe into the stump, wiped his forehead. You know how to split? No. Then you'd lose a finger. He pulled the axe free. But you can stack what I've cut, if you want. Eleanor stepped into snow. Her boots sank deep. She started gathering logs, carrying them to the pile. Her hands went numb. Her back ached. But she kept going. Jacob didn't tell her stop. Didn't say she was wrong. Just kept splitting, and she kept stacking. When the pile was done, Jacob drove axe and stump. That'll last 2 weeks. He looked at the wood, then at Eleanor. Good work. He went inside. Eleanor stood there, hands red and raw. but something in her chest felt warm inside. 2 weeks into marriage. Jacob announced they needed town supplies, he said over breakfast. Need flour and salt. Few other things. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Town meant people. Where people would stare, where Margaret would whisper, where everyone would pity her. Or worse than that, do I have to come? Jacob looked at her. No, but you should. You'll need to know where to get things in case of what? He didn't say. In case he died? In case she left? Eleanor swallowed hard. All right, they rode into Coldwater just after noon. The town looked the same, muddy streets and buildings. People going about business. But when Jacob's wagon rolled down Main Street, things changed completely. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People turned to stare. A woman pulled child closer. A man's hand went to his belt. Jacob's jaw tightened, but he kept eyes forward. Stopped at general store, climbed down. Came around to help Eleanor. She took his hand, stepped down into mud. Whispers started immediately. Jacob ignored them. Walked into the store. Eleanor followed him. Inside, the shopkeeper looked up. His face went neutral. Jacob, Mrs. Hartwell. The title sounded strange. Mrs. Hartwell was her. Need supplies, Jacob said. He handed over a list. The shopkeeper read it, nodded once. I'll get this together. Few minutes. He disappeared into back. Eleanor stood near door, hands folded together. She could feel eyes on her through window. The door opened behind. She turned around. Margaret Finch swept in. All rustling skirts and false smiles. Eleanor, my dear. She took Eleanor's hands. Before Eleanor could pull away, how are you managing? Her eyes were sharp, matching for bruises, probably. I'm well, thank you, Eleanor said quietly. Margaret's smile thinned. You look tired, thinner? I'm fine. Margaret glanced at Jacob. He stood at counter. Back to them. She leaned closer to Eleanor. If you ever need sanctuary, the church doors are open. Eleanor pulled hands free. I don't need sanctuary. Are you certain? A young woman alone in those mountains with... She couldn't finish. Eleanor's patience snapped. With my husband? Yes, Mrs. Finch, I'm certain. Margaret's eyes widened. Well, I was only helping. I don't need your help. The words came out hard. Eleanor didn't take back. Margaret's face flushed red. I see. Well, I hope you don't regret. She turned on her heel and left quickly. The bell chimed harshly. Eleanor's hands were shaking. Behind her, Jacob spoke. Good. She turned around. He was looking at her. People like her thrive on pity. Don't give them any. The shopkeeper returned with the supplies. Jacob paid him. Load the crates. They were almost done when Samuel Gray appeared. He stumbled from the saloon, drunk even at midday. Well, well, he called out. If it isn't Mountain Man and his little bride. Jacob didn't look at him, just kept loading supplies. Samuel crossed the street, got too close. How much did you pay? I'm curious. Eleanor froze in place. Jacob's hand stilled. Samuel grinned widely. Because I heard William sold her cheap. Desperate, I guess. Wonder if she's worth it. Jacob turned around. Slowly and deliberately. His face was calm, but Eleanor saw something in his eyes, something cold and dangerous. Samuel, Jacob said quietly. Walk away. Samuel laughed. Or what? You'll kill me too? The street went silent. People watching closely, waiting for something. Jacob stepped forward. Just one step. But Samuel's grin faltered. You want to talk? About my wife? Jacob's voice was whisper, but everyone heard it. Then talk to me, not about her. To me, he took another step. Samuel backed up. Use your mouth again to disrespect her, and we'll have problems. Jacob's hand didn't move to a weapon. He didn't make threats. He didn't have to. Samuel's face went pale. I was just joking. Wasn't funny. Jacob held his gaze for a long moment, then turned back. We're done here. He helped Eleanor up. Samuel stood in the street, fists clenched tightly. He said nothing more. Jacob clicked his tongue. The wagon rolled forward. Eleanor looked back once. The whole town watched, silent and judging, hating them both. She faced forward and realized her hands had stopped shaking. They rode in silence. For the first hour, Eleanor kept playing the scene, Samuel's words echoing, Jacob's response clear. The way he stepped between her and the insult, not with violence, just with presence. Thank you, she said finally. Jacob glanced at her. For what? For standing up for me. Jacob looked back ahead. You're my wife. Even if you don't want. I didn't say that. The words surprised her. As much as him, Jacob said nothing. For a long time, then quietly spoke. Town's going to talk. No matter what. Always has. What do they say about you? Jacob's jaw tightened. That I killed a man, that I'm a brute, that I don't belong. Did you kill a man? Jacob didn't answer. Eleanor thought he wouldn't, but then he spoke. Yes. Eleanor's breath caught. The law said justified. Jacob continued. But Town didn't care. What happened? Jacob stared ahead. He was trying to burn, bent down. A Crow family inside. 3 kids. Eleanor's eyes widened. You stopped him, yes. And he died, yes. Silence filled the space. Then Eleanor asked, Did you mean to? Jacob's hands tightened. I meant to stop him. He pulled a knife. I was stronger. He paused briefly. Things happened fast. Eleanor studied his profile. The hard jawline. The scar that crossed. The town thinks you're a murderer. I know. But you saved children. Jacob shrugged once. Didn't matter to them. They needed a monster. I gave them one. He clicked his tongue, urged the horses faster. Easier to live up here than fight what they think. Eleanor looked back toward Coldwater, already disappearing behind trees. A town full of people who judged without knowing, who whispered instead of asking, who saw a man defending the helpless and called him killer. I think they're wrong, Eleanor said quietly. Jacob glanced at her, surprised by her words. You don't know me well to make that call. Maybe not, Eleanor admitted. But I know them, and I know who was cruel today. It wasn't you. Jacob said nothing, but something in him shifted, just slightly, like a door opening just a crack. That night, Eleanor found a small tin box on a shelf tucked behind some books. She wasn't snooping, just dusting. The box was old, dented and worn. She opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph, a tintype, faded. It showed a younger Jacob, clean-shaven, wearing a suit, standing in front of a building. Other men stood with him, all smiling brightly, all respectable looking. Eleanor turned it over. On the back written, in faded ink, Coldwater Town Founders, 1872. Her breath caught. Jacob had lived in town. He'd been part of community. One of the founders. That was long ago. Eleanor spun around. Jacob stood at stairs. She hadn't heard him. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I wasn't. It's fine. Jacob crossed to her, took the photograph, stared at it. For a long moment, I was different then. What happened? Jacob set the photograph down, pulled out a chair, sat down heavily. Eleanor sat across from him, waited patiently. Jacob was silent. For so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he began. I had a wife, Sarah. We were happy. His voice was flat, emotionless and controlled. But Eleanor heard pain. Beneath it all, she got pregnant. We were excited, planning a future. He looked at hands. Winter of 73 was brutal. Sarah went into labor early. Complications. Eleanor's chest tightened. The baby was born. A boy, Thomas. Jacob's hands clenched. Sarah started bleeding. Wouldn't stop. The doctor tried. He tried. Silence filled the room. She died within hours. Eleanor's eyes stung. Jacob, I'm so. Thomas lived for a while. 5 years old, smart and curious. Jacob's voice cracked. Just for a second. Got a fever. Winter of 73. I did everything. Everything I could. He looked up at Eleanor. His eyes were hollow. He died in my arms. Eleanor's hand went to mouth. Jacob stood abruptly, paced to the window. After the funeral, both of them, side to side, I heard them in the church, the town talking. He stared into darkness. They said it was my fault. That mountain living killed Sarah, that I should have taken better care of Thomas, that I didn't belong with respectable folks. His fists clenched. They blamed me. Maybe they were right. No, Eleanor said firmly. Jacob turned around. She stood up, walked to him. They were wrong. Fever takes children everywhere. Rich houses, poor cabins, cities and mountains. It doesn't discriminate. They didn't see it because they needed someone to blame. It's easier than accepting that bad things happen. Jacob studied her face. You sound sure. I lost my mother to fever. Eleanor said quietly. She was in town, had a doctor, still died. It wasn't anyone's fault. It just was. They stood in firelight. 2 people who'd lost too much. I'm sorry about Thomas, Eleanor whispered, and Sarah. Jacob nodded once. I'm not trying to replace. I want you to know. Eleanor blinked. I didn't think. Good. Jacob stepped back. Put distance between them. You should rest. Long day. He moved toward his room. Paused at the door. Eleanor? Yes, you're not her. And this isn't that. He looked at her. One more time. I married you to settle a debt, that's all. You don't owe me. Anything beyond that, and he closed the door. Eleanor stood alone. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt something else, something complicated, something she didn't want to examine too closely. The following week, Eleanor started learning, not because Jacob taught, but because she watched. She watched how he ride the sky for weather changes, how he checked wind before deciding what to do, how he moved efficiently through the cabin. She tried to mimic, started a fire one morning before he woke up. It took 4 tries. The kindling was wet, then too dry, then too much. Finally, a small flame. She fed it carefully. By the time Jacob came downstairs, the fire was going. He looked at it, looked at her, nodded once, said nothing at all. But the next morning, he left drier kindling in a specific spot. Eleanor understood he was helping without making it obvious. She started watching how he prepared food, how he preserved meat, how he rationed supplies. She took over tasks, cooking clothes in Creech night, mending torn fabric, not because he asked, because she could. One afternoon she found his rifle by door. She'd never held a gun. She picked it up heavy and awkward. She tried to figure how it worked. The door opened. But Jacob entered, saw her. She expected him to take it away. Instead, he closed door, walked over to her. "You'll shoot yourself, holding it like that." Eleanor set it down. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. You should know how." He picked up a rifle, shows her how. "Stock against your shoulder. Firm, but not tight." He demonstrated clearly. Sight along the barrel. Breathe out slow. Squeeze. Don't pull. He handed it over. "Try." Eleanor lifted it, tried to copy stance. The rifle wavered. "Heavier than you thought." "Yes, you'll get used to it." He moved behind her, didn't touch her, just talked her through, feet wider, balanced the weight. Eleanor adjusted her stance. "Better. Now aim." At that tree, Eleanor sighted down barrel. Her arms were tired. "When you're ready, squeeze." Eleanor took a breath, held it in, squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard against her. She stumbled back. Jacob steadied her, hands on her shoulders, then immediately away. First time always knocks back. You'll learn to brace. Eleanor's shoulder throbbed. But she'd done it. She'd fired a rifle. "Did I hit anything?" Jacob walked a tree, studied it carefully, 3 feet to right. "But you hit tree behind." Eleanor groaned loudly. Jacob almost smiled. "Almost. Takes practice. We'll do this weekly. Thank you." Jacob took the rifle. "You don't have to thank. You need to know how to protect yourself." "Why?" "Because you live on mountain, and I might not always be here." He said it factually, but Eleanor's chest tightened at the thought, Jacob not here, her completely alone. She pushed it away. That night, Eleanor made dinner, rabbit stew from scratch. She'd watched Jacob make it a dozen times. She tried to replicate. The result was passable, not good exactly, but not terrible. Jacob ate without complaint. Eleanor picked at hers. It was bland. She'd forgotten the salt. Halfway through eating, Jacob stood up, got the salt, set it in front, said nothing at all. But his eyes glinted. Amusement may be showing. Eleanor salted her stew. "It helped a lot. I'll do better next time." Jacob shrugged once. "I've had worse. It wasn't much, but coming from him, it felt like praise." After dinner, they sat by the fire. Jacob carved a piece of wood carefully. Eleanor watched his hands, precise and patient. "What are you making?" "Spoon." Old one cracked. Eleanor leaned back. "Do you ever get lonely?" Jacob's knife paused. "I did at first, and now?" He resumed his carving. "Got used to it? Is that the same as not being lonely?" Jacob looked at her, really looked at her. "No," he said quietly. "I don't suppose it is." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable, just honest and real. Eleanor watched the fire. "I was lonely in town, surrounded by people, still lonely. I know the feeling. Do you?" "I lived there for years. Never felt like I belonged." "Not really. Even with Sarah?" Jacob's hand stilled. "Even then. She was good and kind, but the town always made me feel like I wasn't enough." He sat down carving. After she died, they proved it. Eleanor's heart ached for the young man. In that photographs, smiling and hopeful, died by grief and judgment. They were wrong, Eleanor said. Jacob looked at her. "You keep saying that, because it's true." Jacob held her gaze. Something passed between them. An understanding. 2 people the town had failed. 2 people who ended up here, together, by chance or fate or desperation. But together nonetheless. Jacob stood up. "I'll be up early. North traps again." Eleanor nodded once. Good night, Jacob. He paused at stairs. Good night, Eleanor. And for the first time it felt like they were starting to know each other, not as the strangers forced into marriage, but as two people learning to exist in the same space, carefully and slowly, but learning nonetheless. A few days later, Eleanor woke to silence. Clean silence, no fire crackling, no coffee brewing, no sound of Jacob. She dressed quickly, went downstairs. The cabin was empty. The fire was out. Jacob's coat was gone. So was his rifle. Eleanor felt a flicker of panic rising. Where was he? She looked out window. Snow had fallen overnight, heavy and thick. The valley was buried, and in the distance she saw him, a dark figure against white snow, walking along tree line, moving slowly, deliberately forward. Eleanor watched until he disappeared into forest. She should have felt relieved to be alone. Instead, she felt uneasy. She busied herself, started the fire, made coffee, waited for him. Hours passed slowly. Noon came and went. Jacob didn't return. Eleanor tried, not worrying. He knew these mountains. He'd be fine. But as afternoon faded, the worry grew. What if something happened? What if he's hurt? What if she's truly alone now? She stood at window, watching and waiting, and then just as the sun touched peaks, she saw him, walking slowly, limping badly. Eleanor's heart jumped. She grabbed a shawl, ran outside quickly. The cold hit hard. But she didn't stop. Jacob saw her coming, raised a hand. I'm fine. He wasn't fine. Blood stained his leg. What happened? Trap. Bear trap. Someone said it illegal. Caught my leg. Eleanor's stomach turned. Need to sit. I need to get inside. She helped him, his weight against her heavy and solid, but she managed. Inside she helped him to a chair. His leg was bad. The trap had torn through his trousers. The wound was deep, still bleeding steadily. I need to clean this. I can sit, please? Jacob looked at her, then nodded once. Eleanor moved fast, heated water quickly, found clean cloth. She'd watched her mother tend wounds years ago, before the fever took her. She knelt in front. This is going to hurt, I know. She cleaned the wound. Jacob's jaw clenched, but he didn't make a sound at all. Eleanor worked carefully. The wound was bad, but clean enough. No metal fragments. She wrapped it tight, off. For a few days. Can't? Traps need checking. The traps can wait. Jacob started to argue. Eleanor looked up. Please. Something in her voice stopped him cold. He nodded slowly. All right. Eleanor sat back. Her hands were shaking. Jacob noticed immediately. You did good. Eleanor looked at blood on her hands, at the bandage she'd wrapped at this man who could have died on the mountain. And she realized something. She would have been devastated if he had, not because she'd be alone now, but because she was starting to care about him, about this life, about this strange, quiet existence they were building. Together, you should rest, she said quietly. Jacob nodded, but he didn't move, just looked at her. Eleanor, yes, thank you. It was the first time he'd thanked her for anything at all. Eleanor felt something in her chest crack, open wide. You're welcome. They sat in firelight, his leg bandaged, her hands still shaking, and between them, something new, something neither expected, the beginning of trust. Jacob's leg healed slowly. 3 days he stayed off, like Eleanor insisted. She brought him food, changed his bandages, checked for infection. There was none. The wound was clean, healing well enough. On the 4th day, Jacob stood up, tested his weight. Eleanor watched from table. How does it feel? Sore, but I can walk. He took a few steps, limp but managed. I need to check traps. Eleanor stood up. I'm coming with you. Jacob turned around. It's a long walk, rough terrain, I know. You don't have to. I want to. Jacob studied her, then nodded once. Get your coat and boots, real ones. He gestured to a chest. Eleanor opened it. Inside were clothes, men's clothes mostly, but also some that might fit her, wool trousers and coat, fur-lined boots. Whose were these? Jacob's face went blank. Sarah's. She was tall. They might fit. Eleanor touched the fabric. It felt wrong. Wearing a dead woman's clothes like this, she'd want them used, Jacob said quietly. No point letting them rot. Eleanor looked at him. He meant it. She nodded once, changed behind the partition. The trousers fit well. The coat was warm. The boots were snug, but comfortable enough. When she came down, Jacob was waiting. He handed her a walking stick. Use this, snow hides holes. They set out together. The mountain was different, on foot, harder and colder, but also beautiful. Eleanor had never been this deep into wilderness. The trees were massive. Ancient pines that creaked, the snow was pristine, untouched except for tracks. Jacob moved slowly because of his leg. Eleanor stayed close. He showed her trap lines, how to check them without getting caught, how to reset them, how to read signs. "This one's been tripped," he said, kneeling down, "but nothing caught." "What does that mean?" "Something smart. Fox, maybe? Or a wolverine." He reset it carefully. Moved on ahead. They checked 6 traps. 3 were empty. One had a marten. Jacob dispatched it quickly, humanely and fast. Added it to bag. The other 2 destroyed. Torn apart completely. "Bare," Jacob said, examining the damage. "Recently, last few days," he stood up, scanning the trees. "We should head back." Eleanor didn't argue. On the walk back, Eleanor asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you agree? To marry me?" Jacob didn't answer. They walked in silence for several minutes. Then he spoke. "Your father owed money to a man named Garrett. Bad man, the kind who doesn't forgive." Jacob stepped over log. "Garrett came to me. Said William had a daughter, young and pretty enough. Said if I married you, the debt would clear." Eleanor's chest tightened. "So you bought me?" "No." Jacob stopped walking, turned to face her. "I paid the debt. That's different. How?" "Because I told Garrett I'd marry you, but only if you agreed, and only if you could leave whenever." Eleanor stared at him. He didn't like that. Jacob continued speaking. "But I don't work with men like him unless it's my terms." He started walking again. "You agreed at altar? You could have said no. I would have found another way to help your father. You would have." Jacob glanced at her. "I'm not a good man, but I'm not him." They walked on. Eleanor's mind spun. He'd given her choice even then, even when she didn't. Why help at all?" she asked him. "You didn't know us." Jacob was quiet. "For a long time. Your father came once, years ago, right after Sarah died, brought me a casserole. Said his wife made it. Said no one should. Grieve alone." Eleanor's eyes widened. "I never ate it," Jacob continued. "Couldn't eat much then, but I remembered. He was kind when he didn't have to be." He shrugged once. "Figured I owed him. Didn't figure it'd turn out like this." Eleanor walked beside him. This man who the town called a beast, who had married a stranger to repay a kindness, who had given her freedom, when he could have demanded. "I'm glad it did," she said quietly. "Turn out like this?" "Yes." Something flickered in eyes, surprise or maybe hope, but he said nothing, just kept walking. And Eleanor followed. 2 weeks later, they needed supplies again. Eleanor dreaded it, but Jacob was firm. "You need fabric. I need nails. We go together." The ride to town was tense. Eleanor's stomach twisted the whole way when they rolled down Main Street. The stairs began immediately, but this time Eleanor didn't shrink. She sat upright, met their eyes, let them look. Jacob stopped at store. They went inside together. The shopkeeper nodded. "Jacob, Mrs. Hartwell, need supplies," Jacob said. He handed over list. The shopkeeper started gathering. Eleanor browsed the fabric, found a sturdy cotton, some thread. The door opened behind. She didn't turn. Didn't need to. She knew that voice. Well, still alive. I see. Samuel Gray. Drunk-eyed again." Eleanor ignored him. Samuel moved closer. "Didn't think you'd last." "The winter girl?" Eleanor continued examining fabric. "Guess the mountain man's been treating you right." The tone was ugly, insinuating things. Eleanor's hands stilled. Samuel laughed loudly. "Or maybe you're just tougher than you look." Jacob appeared beside her, silent and radiating warning. Samuel grinned widely, emboldened by whiskey and stupidity. "What's the matter, Jacob? Can't take a joke?" "Wasn't a joke," Jacob said quietly. Samuel stepped closer. Too close. His hand reached for Eleanor's shoulder. "Maybe she needs a—" Jacob moved fast. His hand caught wrist, twisted it hard. Samuel yelped, went to his knees. Jacob held him there, voice low, deadly calm. "You touch my wife, you lose the hand." Samuel's face went white. You were just leaving." Jacob released him. Samuel scrambled back, clutching his wrist. The store went silent, everyone watching. Old man Peters stood near the back, watching everything. Eleanor stepped forward, surprising herself. "I'm not afraid of my husband, Mr. Gray." Her voice was steady, clear and strong. "I never have been." She looked around store. At all watching faces, "You all think you know what happens in cabin. You don't. Margaret Finch stood near door. Eleanor, dear, if he's... No one forces me to say anything. Eleanor's voice was sharp. You want to know truth? My husband gave me a room with lock. He taught me to shoot. He gave me horse and map to leave whenever I want. She looked at Margaret. Can you say the same? About your marriage? Margaret's face flushed red. Eleanor turned to shopkeeper. I'd like 3 yards of this fabric, please. Her hands didn't shake. The shopkeeper nodded, started cutting fabric. No one else spoke. Jacob paid for everything, loaned the supplies. They walked out together. Behind them, silence broke. Whispers rising urgent and confused. Old man Peters followed. Them outside. Jacob, Mrs. Hartwell. They turned around. Peters was 70. White beard, kind eyes. I owe you both an apology. Jacob's jaw tightened. Don't need it. Maybe not. I'm giving anyway. Peters looked at Eleanor. I knew this man when he lived here, knew his wife, knew his boys. He turned to crowd in the doorway. And I stood by while you all blamed him for things he couldn't control. Margaret stepped forward. Mr. Peters. Surely. Nothing, Margaret. Peters' voice was firm. You want to know what kind of man Jacob Hartwell is? He pointed at Jacob. That man you call a killer. He stopped a man from burning a tent with children inside, Crow children. The man he killed was trying to murder babies. Gasps from the crowd. The law said justified. But none of you cared to ask. Peters shook his head. You blamed him when? Sarah died? Like he caused bleeding? Like he willed it? His voice broke. And when that sweet boy died of fever, you said Jacob didn't care for him right, like fever gives a damn. About how much you care. He looked at Jacob. I should have said this years ago. I'm sorry. Jacob's face was stone, but Eleanor saw his throat work, saw him swallow hard. Past is past, Jacob said roughly. Maybe, but truth matters. Peters tipped his hat to Eleanor. You take care of each other. And he walked away. The crowd stood stunned in complete silence. Jacob climbed into wagon. Eleanor joined him. They rode out slowly. No one tried stopping. No one said words. That night, Eleanor found Jacob sitting outside, despite the cold, despite the dark, just sitting on step, staring at nothing. She brought him coffee, sat beside him, handed him the cup. He took it, didn't drink it, just held it. You didn't have to, he said finally. Do what? Stand up for me. In the store, Eleanor looked at stars. Yes, I did. Why? Because you've stood up. For me, more than once. Jacob said nothing. Eleanor continued. Because they're wrong. About you. All of them. Peters wasn't. No, he told truth. She turned to him. You saved children. You cared for son. You loved your wife. Her voice softened, and you gave stranger freedom when you could have. Taken it away. Jacob finally looked. You're not a stranger anymore. Eleanor's breath caught. No, she agreed. I'm not. They sat in silence, shoulder to shoulder, sharing warmth and cold, and Eleanor realized she didn't want leave. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to the next morning. Eleanor was cleaning the storage room. Jacob had gone to check southern traps. She found a crate in the back, covered with old cloth. Curiosity got the better. She pulled cloth away. Inside was a cradle, small and beautifully carved. The wood was aged, but well maintained. Eleanor touched it. Her chest ached. Thomas, this was Thomas's cradle. She ran fingers over the carved edges. Jacob had made this. She was certain the craftsmanship was his. Careful, precise, made with love. Underneath the cradle were other things. A small blanket, a wooden horse, a book of rhymes. Eleanor's eyes stung. She shouldn't be looking. This was private, sacred to him. She started to cover it back up. It's all right. Eleanor jumped. Jacob stood in doorway. She hadn't heard him. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean to. I know. Jacob crossed to her, looked down at cradle. His face was blank, but his eyes betrayed. I couldn't get rid, he said quietly. Couldn't keep it out, Eleanor understood. Too painful to see, too precious to discard. He was 5, she asked softly. Yes, Jacob was quiet. For a long moment, then he sat down on a crate, picked up wooden horse, curious, always asking questions. Why is sky blue? Where do birds go? Why can't I ride? A real horse yet, a ghost of smile. Touched his lips. He loved horses, could count to 20. Got mad if I counted for him, because he wanted to. Do it himself. Eleanor sat beside him. He sounds wonderful. He was. Jacob turned the horse over in his hands. He looked like Sarah. Same eyes, same smile. He set horse down. I thought losing her would kill me. Then I had him, and I thought, I can do this. For him, his voice dropped. Then I lost him, too. Eleanor's hand found his, squeezed it tight. Jacob looked at hands, didn't pull away. I thought I'd never feel anything again, he said. Didn't want to. Feeling meant pain. You looked at her. But then you came. And whether I wanted to or not, Eleanor's heart raced. Is that bad? Jacob shook his head. I don't know. Scares me. Why? Because everyone I've cared about has died. His voice was raw. And I can't go through that again. Eleanor held hand tighter. You can't live afraid. Of loss, Jacob. I've been doing it for years. That's not living. That's surviving. Jacob looked at her, really looked at her. What's the difference? Eleanor thought about it. Living is when you let yourself care, even though it might hurt you. Surviving is when you lock everything away. To avoid the pain, she paused. I survived in town. I was lonely, but safe from caring about anyone who didn't care back. She squeezed his hand. Here I'm learning to live again. Jacob's thumb brushed over her knuckles. Just once. You're braver than me. No, just learning. From you. From me? You married a stranger to help her father. You gave me freedom when you could have demanded obedience from me. You're kind even though the world hasn't been kind to you. Eleanor's eyes met his. That takes more courage than hiding does. Jacob stood up, pulled her up with him. They stood close. Too close. Not close enough. Eleanor. The door slammed open downstairs. They both jumped. Heavy footsteps. A voice slurred and angry. Jacob, I know you're here. Eleanor's blood went cold, that voice. She knew it. Jacob's jaw clenched. Stay here, Jacob. But he was moving down the stairs. Eleanor followed him. In the main room stood William Ashford, her father, drunk and disheveled. Angry? There you are, William said. We need to talk. Jacob's voice was ice. You need to leave. Not until I get what I'm owed. Eleanor stepped into view. William's eyes found her. Eleanor, tell your husband. To be reason to go, Father. William's face darkened. Father? Now? You call me? Father? After you abandoned me? You sold me. I saved you. Gave you a home. A husband. Eleanor's hands clenched. You gave me away. To a stranger? To pay your debts? William waved a hand, and look how well. It worked out. You got a rich husband, a nice cabin. He turned to Jacob. Surely you can spare a little for your wife's poor father. Jacob's voice was deadly. I paid your debt. That's done. The debt to Garrett. Sure, but you owe me. She's my daughter. She's my wife, Jacob said. And you don't get a damn thing. William's face went red. You think you're better than me? You're just a brute with money. Jacob stepped forward. Get out, not without. Now, the single word carried will and threat before it of violence. William looked between them, saw Jacob's face, saw Eleanor's stance, together and united. He sneered, fine, but don't come crying to me. When he shows his true colors, he looked at Eleanor. Your mother would be ashamed of you. Something in Eleanor snapped. My mother died when I was 12. You don't get to use her name. Her voice was steel. A father doesn't sell his daughter. A father protects her. She stepped closer. You threw me away. Jacob gave me choice. The first choice I've. She pointed to door. Leave and don't come. Back here. William's mouth worked. Eleanor. I mean it. You're not welcome here. William looked to Jacob, hoping for what? Support or sympathy. Jacob's expression was granite. You heard her. William stood there for a moment. Then he turned, stumbled to the door, paused with hand on the latch. You always were ungrateful, just like her, and he left, slamming door behind him. Eleanor stood frozen, shaking badly. Not with fear, with rage and grief and relief. Jacob moved to window, watched William stumble toward a horse, mount clumsily, ride away. Only when he was out of sight. Did Jacob turn? You all right? Eleanor nodded, then shook her head, then started to cry. Jacob crossed to her, hesitated briefly, then pulled her close into his arms. Eleanor buried her face in his chest, sobbed for the father she'd lost years ago, for the man who'd become a stranger, for the life she'd left behind. Jacob held her, didn't tell her it was all right, didn't offer empty comfort, just held her, let her cry. When the tears stopped, Eleanor pulled back. I'm sorry. Don't be. I got your shirt wet. Jacob almost smiled. It'll dry. Eleanor wiped her eyes. He was right about one thing. What's that? I am ungrateful. Jacob's brow furrowed. I should thank you for everything. For the room with lock, for the rifle, for the freedom. She paused, for seeing me as a person, not property. Jacob's hand came up, cupped her face gently. You don't owe me gratitude, Eleanor. Then what do I? Owe you? Nothing. His thumb brushed away. A tear, at this point. You don't owe anyone anything. Eleanor covered his hand with hers. What if I want to give something anyway? Jacob's eyes searched hers. What do you want to give? A choice. What choice? The same one you gave me. She took a breath. I can stay. Or I can go. You've made that clear. Her voice steadied. I'm choosing to stay. Not because I have to, because I want to. Jacob's hand trembled slightly. Eleanor. I'm not finished. She stepped closer. I'm choosing to be your wife, really your wife. Not just in name. Her eyes held his. If you'll have me. Jacob stared at her. Conflict clear on face. Want and fear and hope I can't promise. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for a chance. Eleanor's voice was soft. A chance for both of us to live, not just survive. Jacob's other hand came up, framed her face. I'm terrified of losing you. I know, I know. Eleanor leaned into touch, but I'm here now, and I'm choosing this, choosing you. Jacob's forehead rested against hers. Why? Because you're a good man, because you've been kind. When the world wasn't, because you gave me freedom, and I'm using it. To stay. She smiled slightly, because somewhere along the way I started caring about you, and I think you started caring about me. Jacob's eyes closed. I do. Then let yourself have this, have us. Jacob pulled back just enough to look. You're sure? I'm sure. He studied her face, looking for doubt, finding none at all. And then he kissed her, gentle and tentative, asking, not demanding. Eleanor kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, his arms wrapping around her. It wasn't their first kiss. That had been at altar, ligatory and empty. This was different. This was choice. This was real. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Jacob rested his forehead. Against hers again. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. What if I mess it up? Eleanor smiled. Then we'll figure it out together. Jacob's arms tightened around her, together. That night, Eleanor didn't go to her room. Jacob didn't ask her. Close together, her head on shoulder, his arm around her. Just being. What happens now? Eleanor asked quietly. I don't know. Are you scared? Jacob was quiet, then nodded once, terrified. Eleanor took his hand. Me too, but you're still here. So are you. Jacob kissed the top of her head. So I am. They sat in silence, comfortable and warm. Fire crackling. The wind quiet outside. Tomorrow, Eleanor knew, things would change. They would have to figure out what this meant, what they were to each other. But tonight, this was Insif, being together, choosing together, building something new from ruins of what came before. And in the morning, they would face whatever came next. Together, spring came slowly. To the mountains, the snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth beneath. The creek swelled with runoff, rushing and wild. Birds returned, their songs filling valley. And inside the cabin, something else thawed. Eleanor and Jacob moved around each other differently, not as strangers, not even as roommates, as partners. He taught her to ride his mountain horse, a sturdy, mare-tamed dust. Eleanor fell off twice, got back on 3. Times Jacob watched, arms crossed, never helped unless asked. When she finally stayed on through a full circuit, he nodded once. Good, that was all. But his eyes held. Pride. She taught him things, 2 small things. How to mend clothes properly instead of rough patches. How to make bread that didn't taste like stone. How to laugh again. That last one surprised them both. It started when Eleanor tried to chop wood. She'd watched Jacob do it 100 times. How hard could it be? Very hard as it turned out. She missed the log. Enter the axe buried itself in dirt. Jacob appeared from cabin. What are you doing? Helping? You're going to lose a foot. I'm being careful. Eleanor pulled axe free. Try it again. Hit the log. It didn't split. The axe stuck. She pulled hard. It didn't budge. Jacob walked over, stood behind her. You're using your arms. Use your whole body. He put his hands over hers on handle, like this. Together they pulled axe free, raised it up, brought it down. The log split clean. Eleanor turned her head. His face was close. Too close. Not close enough. I think I need more practice. she said quietly. Jacob's breath was warm. I think you need a smaller axe. Eleanor laughed. Jacob stared at her, then smiled. A real smile, not much. But there it is, Eleanor said softly. What? I was starting to think you'd forgotten how. Jacob's smile widened. Just a fraction. Maybe I had. He stepped back, released her hands. Come on, I'll find you something that won't kill you. Eleanor followed him to the storage shed, her heart lighter than it had been in years. 3 weeks after William's visit, Jacob made an announcement. There's a church service on Sunday, Easter. Eleanor looked up from mending. Are we going? Jacob's jaw tightened. I need to. Why? Jacob set down tool. He was sharpening. There's something I need to do publicly. Eleanor waited. Jacob stood up, paced to the window. When we married, town. Thought I bought you. Like property, I know. They still think it. Peters told the truth about the killing. But they still think. You're trapped here. Jacob turned to face. I need them to. No different. Eleanor's chest tightened. What are you going to do? Jacob crossed the chest, pulled out papers, legal documents. He brought them over. Eleanor unfolded them. Deed to land, Northern Valley Tract, 300 acres, water rights from creek. The name on deed made her breath catch. Eleanor Ashford Hartwell, not Jacob Eleanor. This was Sarah's land, Jacob said quietly. Her father left it to her before we married. When she died it came to me. He sat across. It's the most valuable thing I own. Good grazing, water year, round, could support livestock, crops, whatever. Eleanor stared at deed. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm giving it to you. Eleanor's head snapped up. What? Jacob's eyes were steady. It should have gone to another woman. Sarah would have wanted that. He gestured to papers. It's yours, your name, your property. You can sell it, lease it, build on it, live on it separate. From me. Eleanor's hands trembled. Jacob, I'm going to give it to you, publicly, at church in front of everyone. His voice was firm. So they know. You're not my property. You never were. Eleanor's eyes filled. You don't have to. Do this? Yes, I do. Jacob leaned forward. You chose to stay. That means everything to me. But I need you to know you can leave anytime with means to support yourself. He tapped the deed. This gives you that. Eleanor set papers down carefully. This is your security. No, you are. Jacob's hand covered hers. Money and land don't mean anything if you're not free. Eleanor looked at their giant's hands, at this man who kept giving her the thing most men never would. Choice when? She asked. Sunday you'll come with? Eleanor nodded. Yes. Jacob squeezed her hand, released it. It won't be easy. The town will talk. Let them. Jacob almost smiled. All right then. Sunday morning dawned clear, and cold Eleanor dressed carefully. Not in borrowed clothes. In a dress she'd made herself civil and sturdy. Hers Jacob wore clean trousers, a shirt without patches, his Sunday coat, the one from photograph, older now, but still good. He didn't shave beard, didn't cut his hair. Short, he was who he was. They rode to town in silence. Eleanor's stomach churned. Jacob's hands were steady on the reins. His jaw was tight. This was hard for him going back to the plea. That had destroyed him. Eleanor reached over, touched his arm. He glanced at her. She didn't say anything, just stayed close. Jacob's hand covered hers briefly, then returned to reins. But it was enough. Coldwater's church was full. Easter service always drew a crowd. Jacob stopped the wagon outside. People were filing in. They saw him. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Jacob climbed down, came around to help Eleanor. She took his hand, stood beside him. Together they walked toward church. The crowd parted. Whispers followed. Is that Jacob Hartwell? Haven't seen him in church for years. Wonder what he wants. Poor girl. Look how thin. Eleanor kept her head high. Jacob's hand was firm on her elbow. They entered the church. Every pew was full. Margaret Finch sat in third row. Her eyes widened. Samuel Gray stood at the back, sober today, his face wary. Old man Peters sat near the front. He nodded to them. Reverend Clay stood at the altar, saw them. His face registered surprise, then something else, concerns or maybe hope. Jacob led Eleanor to a pew. They sat down. The church filled. With tension waiting, the service began. Reverend Clay spoke about resurrection, about new life from death, about redemption. His eyes kept drifting to Jacob. Eleanor wondered if he knew. If Jacob had told him what was coming, the sermon ended, the reverend called for any who wished to speak. This was customary Easter testimonies, usually about faith restored, prayers answered. Jacob stood up. The church went silent, every eye on him. He walked to front, stopped before the altar, turned to face them. Eleanor's heart pounded. Jacob's voice when he spoke was quiet, but it carried, I know most of. You didn't expect me. Here, murmurs of agreement. I haven't been to this church in 4 years, not since I buried my wife and son. The murmurs stopped. I stayed away because I believed what you thought of me, that I was responsible, that I didn't belong among decent folk. Jacob's hands clenched. Maybe you were right. Maybe I didn't belong. He paused. But I'm here today because of her. He looked at Eleanor, my wife. Eleanor's breath caught. When we married, I know what you all thought, that I bought her, that she was payment for a debt. Margaret Finch shifted. You were wrong. Jacob pulled papers from coat. The deed. This is a land deed. 300 acres in North Valley belonged to my first wife, Sarah. Her father's land. His voice remained steady. When Sarah died, it became mine. He looked at Eleanor. Today I'm giving it to Eleanor. Gasps rippled through church. Jacob walked to Eleanor's. Pugh handed her the deed. This is yours, your name on title, your land to do with as you choose. Eleanor took the papers, her hands shaking. Jacob turned back. She can sell it. She can live on. It's separate from me. She can use it to leave and start over somewhere else. His voice grew stronger. I'm giving this to her so everyone in this town knows she's not my property. She never was. Margaret Finch stood up. Mr. Hartwell, this is highly irregular. Sit down, Margaret. Old man Peter's voice was firm. Margaret's mouth opened, closed. She sat down. Peters stood up, walked to the front, stood beside Jacob. This town owes this man an apology. Peter's voice was strong, despite his age. We blamed him for things beyond his control. We called him murderer. When he saved children, we shunned him when he needed us most. He looked at congregation, and we judged him for marrying Eleanor without knowing the truth. Peters turned to Jacob. You're a better man than most of us, myself included. He held out hand. Jacob hesitated, then shook it. Peters turned to congregation. Anyone else have something to say? Silence, long and uncomfortable. Then Reverend Clay stepped forward. I married you both. I confess I had doubts. I worried for Eleanor's safety. He looked at Eleanor. But I see now. I was wrong. Forgive me. Eleanor nodded, unable to speak. A woman in back stood. Grace Chen, the herbalist. I came to this town 15 years ago. I know what it's like to be judged. She looked at Jacob. You've never treated me like I was less. Never looked through me like others do. She bowed slightly. Thank you. Jacob nodded, throat working. One by one others stood. Not everyone. Margaret Finch remained seated, lips pursed. Samuel Gray looked at. Feet. But enough stood. Enough spoke. Enough acknowledged their mistakes. When the last person sat down, Jacob cleared his throat. I didn't come here for apologies. I came to make sure Eleanor had what she needed. He looked at her. That's all. He walked back, sat beside her. Eleanor looked down at deed in her hands, at her name, at the gift that meant freedom. The Reverend stepped forward. Let us pray. But Eleanor barely heard the prayer. She was too busy looking at the man beside her, the man who'd given her everything by asking for nothing, the man the town called a beast. Who was the most human person she'd known after the service? People approached them, some to apologize, some to thank Jacob for old kindnesses they'd never acknowledged, some just to see Eleanor, to confirm she was really all right. Margaret Finch left without speaking. Samuel Gray did the same. But old man Peters walked them to wagon. You planning to come back to town? He asked Jacob. Jacob shrugged. If I need to, you'd be welcome. Some of us anyway. Jacob looked at town, the place that had hurt him, broken him, cast him out. Maybe, he said. It wasn't agreement, but it wasn't refusal. Either. Peters seemed satisfied. He tipped his hat to Eleanor. You take care, Mrs. Hartwell. You too, Mr. Peters. They climbed into wagon, rode out of town. Behind them, people watched. But this time whispers. We're different, confused and ashamed and curious. Eleanor didn't look back. She looked forward, at the mountains ahead, at the home waiting, at the man beside her. They rode in silence. For the first hour, then Eleanor spoke. Why did you really do it? Jacob glanced at her. I told you so you'd have means to leave. But why publicly? You could have just given me the deed. Jacob was quiet for a long moment because I wanted them to know what they thought about. Us was wrong, he paused, and because I wanted you to hear it from me in front of witnesses. Hear what? Jacob stopped the wagon right there on trail, turned to face her. That you're free, completely free, to stay or go, to be with me or not. His eyes held hers. I wanted you to know that any choice you make from here is yours, not because of debt, not because you're trapped, but because you want to. Eleanor's eyes filled. I already made my choice. I know, but I needed you to make it with full knowledge of your options. Jacob's hand cupped her focus. I love you, Eleanor. I didn't plan to, tried not to, but I do. Eleanor's breath caught. And because I love you, I need you to be free, even if that freedom takes you away from me. A tear slid down Eleanor's cheek. Jacob's thumb wiped it away. I know you chose to stay, but I needed to make sure you knew you could choose again any time, and I'd support it. Eleanor leaned into hand. You really are a fool, Jacob Hartwell. His brow furrowed. Why? Because any sane man would have kept that land, kept the power, made sure I couldn't leave. I'm not any man. No, you're not. Eleanor covered his hand. You're the man I love, the man I choose. Not because I have to, because I want to. She smiled through tears. And you just made. Sure, I could choose you every day for the rest of my life, with full knowledge that I could walk away. Yes, so I'm choosing you again right now, knowing I'm free to go. Eleanor kissed him, soft and sure. I'm staying, Jacob, not because of land or security or lack of options. Another kiss because I love you and I want to build a life with you. Jacob pulled her close, held her like she might disappear. I'm still scared, he admitted. So am I. What if something happens? Then we'll face it together. Eleanor pulled back to look at him. We can't live afraid of loss. We have to live. In spite of it, Jacob rested his forehead against hers. Together? Together. They sat there on trail, holding each other, two broken people choosing to be whole. Finally, Jacob picked up reins. Let's go home, Eleanor smiled. Yes, let's. Spring turned to summer. The valley bloomed. Wildflowers covered the meadows, purple and yellow and white. Eleanor planted a garden near the cabin, vegetables and herbs, a few flowers. Jacob built her fence to keep deer out. They worked side by side, learning the rhythm of partnership, of marriage that was real, not forced, not convenient, real. One evening, Eleanor stood at the edge of her land, the land Jacob had given her. She looked at valley, at the creek running, silver and sunset at the mountains standing, guard at the cabin where smoke rose from chimney. Jacob appeared beside her, didn't say anything, just stood there. I was thinking, Eleanor said, about what to do with this land. Jacob nodded, waiting. I could sell it, use the money to travel, see the world. You could, or I could lease it, get income without working. It myself, also possible. Eleanor looked at him. Or I could give it to someone who needs it. Someone like Grace Chen's daughter, so she has options. When she's grown, Jacob's eyes softened. That's generous. I learned from the best. Eleanor turned back. I think I'll keep it for now, yeah? Yeah. Maybe one day we'll have children. They could use it. Or maybe I'll just keep it as a reminder of what? Eleanor smiled. That I'm free. That someone loved me enough to let me go. She leaned against him, and that I loved him enough to stay. Jacob's arm wrapped around Eleanor. Thank you. For what? For staying, for choosing this, for loving me despite, he trailed off. Eleanor turned in arms. Despite what? Your past, your grief, your fear? She touched his face. Those things made you who you are, a man who understands loss, who values freedom, who knows love isn't possession. She kissed him softly. I don't love you. Despite those things, I love you. Because of them, Jacob held her close. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway, Jacob laughed. The sound rich and warm. Eleanor smiled against chest. There's that laugh again. You keep finding it. Good, I plan to. Keep looking. They walked back to the cabin, hand in hand, the mountains darkening around them, stars beginning to appear. Inside, Eleanor started dinner. Jacob added wood to fire, simple tasks, ordinary moments, but filled with something extraordinary. the choice to be together every day. For as long as they had, autumn came. The aspens turned gold. The air grew crisp. Eleanor and Jacob prepared for winter, stocking supplies, chopping wood, preserving food. One afternoon, Grace Chen brought her daughter. They stayed for tea. The girl May was shy at first, but Eleanor coaxed her, outshowed her the garden, the horses, the valley. Jacob and Grace talked quickly about town, about changes. Margaret Finch still talks, Grace said, but fewer people listen. Jacob nodded, and Samuel Gray went east somewhere. Good riddance. Grace smiled slightly. Peters asks about you, says you're welcome to visit. Jacob looked at Eleanor, playing with May in the garden, lawing. Maybe we will someday. Grace followed his gaze. She's good for you. I know, and you're good for her. Jacob didn't respond. Grace stood to leave, called for May. At the door she turned to Jacob. My daughter wants to learn to read, really learn, not just what the schoolhouse teaches. Jacob understood. Eleanor could teach her, if you'd like. Grace's eyes filled. I would pay. No need. Eleanor would. Enjoy it. Grace bowed. Thank you. After they left, Eleanor came inside. What was that about? Jacob told her. Eleanor's face lit up. Really? I could teach if you want. I do. Eleanor hugged him. This is perfect. I've been wanting something useful to do. Oak held her, breathed in the scent of her hair, lavender and wood smoke. You're already useful. You know what I mean. Something beyond just us. She pulled back. I want to make a difference here. Help people. Jacob nodded. Then we will. We? You teach. I'll build a room onto cabin. Give you space for students. Eleanor's eyes widened. You do that? Why not? It's your land, our home. Might as well use it. Eleanor kissed him, hard and grateful. I love you. I love you too. And so the cabin grew. A small room added to the side, big enough for table, chairs and books, a place for learning. May came twice weekly, then other children from town, ones who needed extra help, ones whose parents worked, ones who were different, like Grace's daughter. Eleanor taught them all in kind, firm when needed. And Jacob watched her bloom, become more than a girl who'd been sold, more than a wife, a teacher, a friend, a woman making her own mark on the world. Winter came again, Eleanor's second winter. In the mountains, but this one was different. This one she wasn't afraid. She knew how to survive now, how to read weather, how to shoot, how to keep fire going, how to preserve food, how to be partner. One night a blizzard hit fierce and sudden. The wind screamed. Snow piled against windows. Jacob made sure everything was secure. Then came inside. Eleanor had soup ready, bread warm from oven. They ate by firelight. The storm raging outside, but inside all warm and safe. After dinner they sat together. Eleanor with her mending, Jacob carving wood, the silence comfortable. Eleanor set down needle. Jacob, do you ever regret marrying me? Jacob's hands stilled. He looked at her. Never. Not even when it was hard. Especially not then. He set down carving. You made everything bearable, then you made it good. Eleanor smiled. I could say the same about you. Jacob pulled her close. She settled against him, her head on shoulder, his arm around her. Tell me about Thomas. Eleanor said softly. Jacob stiffened, then relaxed. What do you want? To know? Anything and everything. Jacob was quiet. For a moment, then he began talking about his son, his laugh and questions, his curiosity. Eleanor listened, asked questions, lawed at funny stories, cried at sad ones. And Jacob talked, more than he had, in years, letting the memories out, finding they didn't hurt quite so much anymore. Thank you, he said, when he finished. For what? For letting me remember, for not being afraid of his ghost. Eleanor touched his face. He's part of you. I could never be. Afraid of that, she paused. And Sarah, tell me about her. So Jacob did. And Eleanor listened, learning about the woman who'd come before, the woman whose land she now owned, the woman whose husband she now loved. And instead of jealousy, Eleanor felt gratitude. Sarah had loved Jacob, had given him son, had left him land. That became Eleanor's freedom. In a strange way, Sarah had made this possible. I wish I could. Thank her, Eleanor said. Jacob's arms tightened. She'd like you. You're strong like she was. You think? I know. They sat in firelight, the storm outside, peace inside. And Eleanor realized she was happy, truly happy for the first time. In her life, spring returned. Eleanor's third spring. In the mountains, she stood in garden, planting seeds, planning for the season. Jacob was repairing fence. Winter had been hard. On it, Straighten pressed a hand to her lower back. Jacob noticed. You all right? Eleanor smiled. I'm fine, just tired. Jacob walked over, studied her face. You've been tired lately. Eleanor's hand went to her stomach. Unconsciously, Jacob's eyes followed movement. His breath caught Eleanor. She looked up, nodded. I think so. I'm not certain yet. But Jacob's face went through 100 emotions, joy and terror, hope and fear. Eleanor took his hand. I know you're scared. I can't lose you. You won't. You don't know that. No, but I'm not Sarah. This isn't then. Eleanor placed his hand on her stomach. We're going to be careful. We'll get help from town if we need. Grace knows midwifery. Jacob's hands trembled. What if? Then we'll face it. But we can't live. In fear of what might happen. Eleanor's eyes held his. We have to live. In hope of what could be. Jacob pulled her close, held her like precious. Fragile. I'm terrified, he admitted. I know. So am I. But you're still hopeful. Yes. Because I have you, and you have me, and we're stronger together. Jacob buried his face in her hair. Okay. Okay? We'll try together. Eleanor held him tight. Together, the months passed. Eleanor's belly grew. Jacob was attentive. Almost too much. I'm pregnant, not dying, Eleanor said one day. Jacob had just stopped her from lifting bucket. I know, but nothing. I can. Still do things, not heavy things. Eleanor rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Grace came regularly, checked on Eleanor, brought herbs, gave advice. You're healthy, baby, strong. Jacob worries. Grace nodded knowingly. He lost someone. It's natural, I know, but I need him to trust that this can turn out differently. Give him time. He's trying. And he was slowly. Jacob relaxed. Let Eleanor move at her own pace. Stopped hovering quite so much. They prepared together, peeked up the small room that had been Thomas's, made it ready for new life. Eleanor found the cradle in storage, the one Jacob carved. She brought it to him. Can we use this? Jacob looked at it. Pain flickered across face, but also something else, acceptance. Thomas would want it used. Are you sure? Jacob ran his hand over the wood. He was a generous boy. He'd want his brother or sister to have it. Eleanor's eyes filled. Thank you. Jacob set the cradle in the nursery, stood looking at it for a long moment. Eleanor came up behind, put her arms around. I love you. Jacob covered her hands. I love you too, both of you. Winter came again. Eleanor was large now. Do any day. The first snow fell. Jacob paced nervously. Maybe we should go to town? Stay near the doctor? Eleanor shook her head. Grace is here. She's delivered dozens of babies. But what if, Jacob? Look at me. He did. I'm strong. The baby's healthy. Grace knows what she's doing. Eleanor took his hands. We're going to be fine. Jacob nodded, didn't look convinced, but trusted her. 2 days later, Eleanor woke before dawn, pain low in belly. She touched Jacob's shoulder. It's time. Jacob was up instantly. I'll get Grace. It's still early. We have time. I'm getting Grace. He was out before she could argue. Eleanor smiled despite pain. Grace arrived within an hour. Calm and efficient, she examined Eleanor. You have a while. But everything looks good. The hours passed, painful and long. But Eleanor endured. Jacob stayed close, held her hand, wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement. Finally, as the sun set, the baby came. Cry-filled cabin, strong and healthy. Angry at being born, Grace cleaned the baby, wrapped it, placed it in Eleanor's arms. A girl. Eleanor looked down at the tiny face, perfect and beautiful. Hers. Jacob stood frozen, staring. Jacob, Eleanor said softly. Come meet your daughter slowly. Jacob approached, looked down at baby. His eyes filled. She's perfect, Eleanor finished. Jacob touched the baby's tiny hand. She gripped his finger, and something in Jacob's heart broke open. Joy pure and unfiltered. She's really here. She is. Jacob sat on bed. Eleanor shifted the baby so he could hold carefully. He took her, held her like glass. The baby settled against him, stopped crying. Jacob's tears fell freely. I didn't think I'd ever get this again. I know. I thought I'd lost my chance. Eleanor touched his face. You didn't lose anything. You gained everything. She smiled. We both did. Jacob looked at wife, at his daughter, at the life he thought was over. Now beginning again. What should we name her? Eleanor asked. Jacob thought for a moment. Anna, after your mother. Eleanor's breath caught. You remembered. You told me once. She died of fever. You said she was kind. Jacob looked at baby. This little one should have a name that means something. Someone who was loved. Eleanor leaned against him. Anna Hartwell. Anna Hartwell, Jacob repeated. The baby made small sounds and safe and loved. They sat together, three of them now, a family built not from tradition or obligation, but from choice, from freedom, from love that gave instead of took. Outside snow fell softly, inside a fire burned, warm, and in that cabin, in the mountains, life continued messy and unpredictable, beautiful. Spring came again. Anna was 3 months old, growing strong, curious like her brother had been. Eleanor carried her outside, showed her the valley, the mountains, the creek running silver. This is your home, Eleanor said softly. These mountains, this valley, this life. She smiled at daughter. You'll grow up free. Your father made sure of that. Jacob appeared beside them, put his arm around. Both, she will. Both of you will. Eleanor leaned into him. We already are. They stood in mourning. Sun, watching the world wake, below in the town. Life went on. People still talked, still judged, still whispered, but it mattered less. Now, what mattered was here. This valley, this family, this choice they made every day to stay, to love, to build something worth. Having Jacob kissed Eleanor's temple. Thank you. For what? For everything. For staying, for loving me, for giving me another chance. Eleanor turned to look. I didn't give you a chance, Jacob. We gave each other one. She smiled, and we'll keep giving them every day for as long as we have. Jacob nodded. For as long as we have. Anna made a small sound. They looked down. She was watching the world with wide eyes, taking it all in, this wild, beautiful, harsh, gentle world. Eleanor kissed her daughter's head. She's going to be strong like her mother and kind like her father. They stood together as the sun climbed, higher as the valley came, alive as their life continued. Not perfect, not without fear, but real and theirs, and chosen. Every single day, years would pass. Anna would grow, learn to walk these mountains, shoot straight, ride well, think for herself. More children might come, or they might not. The town would slowly chant. Some people would apologize. Others never would. It wouldn't matter, because Eleanor and Jacob had something the town never gave them, each other. And the freedom to choose that. Every day, for the rest of their lives, the mountains would stand, the seasons would turn, and in that valley, two people who'd been broken would continue to heal. Together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And in the end, that made all the difference.